I smelled burned ozone the moment I stepped into the repository. The scorch in the air was only half electrical, the other half was terror, the kind that seeps out of lungs rendered suddenly tenantless. Racks of cold fork diamond drives towered above me like hospital beds stood on end, their status LEDs dark, their cooling fans frozen mid-whir. Each drive held a copy of a living person's anima-recorded pulses of neural quantum signatures, the government called soul strat. The blackout had lasted 43 seconds. That was all it took for cascading voltage spikes to ripple through the array and corrupt nearly 6 million lives. I'd been hired because those lives were on a 96-hour countdown. Human bodies can keep breathing for a while without their strata, thanks to the reflexive subcortex. But personality, memory, and executive function remain on store. After 4 days, cellular apoptosis begins. Muscles knot, organs shut down, and what's left is an empty chrysalis that no amount of data can refill. The directorate called it an extinction-level event in miniature, one they preferred to keep off the news feeds by any means necessary. Thus they summoned me, Kai Jun, freelance data diver, specialist in deep structure retrieval and psychic patchwork. I unclipped my neural optic umbilical and crouched at the base of Tower 12, where the worst of the surge had hit. A snowstorm of binary garbage tumbled across my visor, 1,000 petabytes of snarled code shrieking with checksum errors. To the untrained eye, the pattern was pure chaos, but I'd learned long ago that chaos had eddies, little backcurrents where meaning clung like plankton. My job was to swim into those currents and haul the living back up before they drowned. Clock reads 91 hours 52 minutes, Director Mental said behind me. She kept her voice cool, but her knuckles were bleaching against the rail. Priority is government cohort Alpha and Beta. After that, whichever civilian clusters you can manage. I didn't remind her that every corrupted cluster belonged to someone desperate. Lovers, parents, children. Directorate brass never enjoyed hearing that their own stripes held the same weight as anybody else's. Instead, I sealed my dermal ports and lay back into the induction cradle, letting the harness lock across my sternum. My haptics warmed, mapping my limbs to the virtual field that waited below the threshold. When Mantle flicked the switch, the room blurred and the black water swallowed me whole. Entry into Limbo always feels like falling sideways through velvet. 1 second gravity is a rumor, the next you're treading ink. Data clouds coalesce as phosphorescent shoals, each representing gigabytes of impulses, smells, tastes, forgotten birthdays, last goodbyes. Tonight, though, Limbo looked sick. The waterline flickered, its usual sapphire dimmed bruise purple. Corruption marks drifted around me, jittering motes that spasmed between 0 and 1, unsure which way to land. In the distance, entire reefs of identity were crumbling, shedding memory fragments that broke apart like rotten coral. I ran diagnostics on my dive rig, ensuring the quantum parity buffer still held. Good. The buffer would let me disentangle myself from any collapsing persona, a vital fail-safe since corrupted minds can grab you in their panic and drag you down. I scanned for Alpha Cohort 200 high-priority officials, but their node tree looked as if someone had swung an axe through the trunk. The root address still flickered in place. Counselor Rin Davos, age 56, favorite tea, jasmine silver needle, childhood fear of moths. She, or what was left of her, would be my anchor. I swam to her node and pushed a finger through the code rind. The rind puckered and dissolved, admitting me to a sphere lit by a single hanging bulb. Beneath it sat Rin, or rather a silhouette wearing her outline, rocking on a wooden chair that creaked without sound. She lifted her head and her eyes strobed static. "Counselor Davos," I said, voice echoing threefold across the construct. "A surge corrupted your storage drive. I'm here to repair and extract you." Her mouth opened, but a dial-tone howl bled out. Corruption had melted her linguistic pathways. I unfurled a toolbox of repair scripts, silver dragonflies, that darted along her skin, stitching torn variables. Each repair ticked a progress meter in my HUD. 10%, 20. The dragonflies patched the first layer, enough that words coalesced from the howl. "Dark," she wheezed. "They took the lights, everything went." I know, stay still. 30%, 40. Suddenly the bulb above us popped, spraying glass that froze mid-air. A shadow slunk into the sphere, gray, faceless, with glitching limbs that bent too many ways. I'd seen shadows before, born when fragmentation pieces together wrong logic loops, predatory byproducts that feed on coherence to stabilize themselves. If it devoured Rin's half-mended persona, she'd be unspoolable, gone for good. I lashed out a firewall whip. The whip crackled, bathing the sphere in white heat. The shadow shrieked, but didn't retreat. It dove for Rin. I leapt after it, catching the thing by its neck of pixels, and pumped my buffer charge straight through its spine. The shadow burst into shards. The blast rocked the sphere's walls, and the chair slid away, but I managed to slam a stasis seal over Rin's code. The seal would keep scavengers out while I finished the mend. 50%. 60. I felt Mantle's impatience buzzing through the uplink, though she wisely kept silent. At 82%, Rin's eyes clicked into focus. She gave me a professional nod, as if we sat in some marble office rather than an expiring limbo bubble. Status? She asked. Steady now. You're stable enough for transfer, I said. On my mark, the cradle will upload you to a new drive. Ready? Do it. I snapped recall hooks into her shoulders. Then I kicked hard, dragging her upward through layers of dissolving light until we breached the waterline. In the physical repository, a biogel vat awaited her, linked to a fresh terraspin. I felt a soft yank as the system relocalized her consciousness and slotted it home, one saved. Back in the real world, I might have allowed myself a breath, but the cradle rocked me right back into the drink. 90 hours left. Over the following 20, I shuttled through beta cohort, triaging. Some mines required only minor defrags, mental sneeze, divers call it. Others resembled ground glass and cost me precious minutes stitching them into passable mosaics. By the time Directorate brass were safely remounted, 72 hours remained for the general population. 6 million. Statistics ran numbers I didn't want to see. If I dove non-stop, assuming an optimistic 8-minute average per psyche, I'd rescue maybe 600. Not even a sliver. Yet I kept going, because each time I surfaced I thought of Leon. My kid sister wasn't technically a casualty. She'd stored her strata at a private clinic across town, but the blackout hadn't known borders. She was 21 and brilliant, studying comparative myth at Nanosei University, and she loved the sea poems of Yi Sang. I'd taught her to surf quantum code when she was 15, and she'd promptly hacked my public records to inscribe Kai the Fish under aliases. Her body now lay in a suspension cot, heart beating, lungs cycling, mind absent. I avoided her ward because guilt stalked it like a tiger. If I failed strangers, I was a villain. If I failed Leon, I was shattered glass. Limbo sensed my worry. The deeper I swam, the more the environment mimicked memories of our childhood cove in Xiamen. The ivory sand, barnacled jetties, and green tide pools where we dared each other to touch sea slugs. The simulation knew such echoes calmed me, so I let them paint the backdrop while I mapped a new target. Node B453R sub-7ER, a civilian cluster containing 91 corrupted drives, Lion included. When I located sub-7ER, my chest tightened. The cluster had broken into a labyrinthine archive shaped like a half-drowned library, mezzanines tilting, book spines unreadable, ladders leading nowhere. Identity shards fluttered like index cards caught in wind. I dived through a smashed skylight and called her name. Kai the Fish, a voice answered from below, lilting, teasing. Late to your own party. I dropped to the flooded atrium. Leanne stood barefoot on the water's surface. She looked 9, not 21. Pigtails missing front tooth. A corruption artifact had collapsed her timeline representation to whatever memory fragment proved most resilient. She didn't recognize her condition. That saved processing overhead, but it hurt to see. I waded toward her. The water chilled my thighs. It was thick with noise. Leanne, it's me. I'm here to bring you home. She giggled. Home is boring. Stay and play. Every second I lingered, bodies expired upstairs. But protocol demanded a minimum patch before extraction. Otherwise, the sudden age shift on reintegration could trigger synaptic shock. I deployed caretaker subroutines, tiny mechanical cranes that lifted memory cubes from the flood and snapped them together inside her aura. The cubes restored adolescence, braces, graduation triumph, first heartbreak. Layer by layer, the 9-year-old filled out, limbs elongating, face sharpening. As I worked, I sensed other presences stirring through the aisles. Shadows again. But these were bigger, bloated with swallowed minds, unperched on a ceiling beam, skulled grins stretching across its chest. They smelled Lien's coherence knitting and prowled closer for a meal. I keyed my uplink. Mantle, I need override for a mass lift. 91 souls here, plus an emergent convoy of corruption beasts. If they consume the cluster, there'll be nothing left to salvage. To exceed stress tolerances on the new drives, Mantle shot back. At best you'd offload partials. We'd have fractured personas screaming for recombination. Impossible. Better partial than vapor. Static. Then, authority granted, Diver, but you signed the release. Copy. I severed audio. My gloves sprouted cables that plunged into the water, tethering to every memory shard across sub-7 ER. 91 pulses lit my HUD. I began compressing them into a rolling data wave like cramming suitcases with whole apartments inside. Compression risks loss, sure, but I calibrated bit rates to keep identity cores intact. Meanwhile, the ceiling shadow crawled lower, drool formed of pixelated ampersands. Kai? Lien's voice quavered. She was nearly full-aged now, though her eyes kept flicking to childhood hues. Something's wrong. Hold my hand. I reached. The shadow lunged. I slammed my will against it, forging a barricade of glowing calligraphy, each character a line from the sea poems Lien adored. Salt wind, moonlit bay, porous hearts. The barricade flared, momentarily blinding the creature. I pivoted, flinging the compressed soul wave upward toward the surface port. Transmission began. 15%, 20. Shadows pummeled my barricade, cracks webbed across the stanzas. One slip and they'd swoop through. I switched tactics. A diver's best weapon is narrative. Shadows lack self because corruption stole it, so they crave story the way lungs crave oxygen. I began to talk. Listen, all of you, listen, I intoned over the din. You are the night after thunder when the harbor lights return. You are the hush before gulls cry dawn. You are the constellations sailors invent so they don't lose home. Hear this story and remember your nature. The words weren't mine alone. They were a synthesis of the 91 souls streaming through me, each lending a phrase, a chord, a childhood motto. Shadows paused. Some tilted their heads, transfixed. The data wave climbed 60%, 75%, but the skull-chested one regained hunger first. It howled, shattering hesitation, and barreled into the barricade. Letters exploded into sparks. The beast tackled me, its jaws widening to swallow my chest. Pain lanced across feedback circuits, threatening to desync me. I had one card left, the parity buffer, reserved for emergency disengage. If I discharged it here, I could destroy the predator, but also sever my tethers, aborting the transfer. Lives would scatter like dust. My limbs trembled. 89%. I thought of Leon's first surf lesson, when we'd paddled beyond safe shallows, and a freak wave flipped her board. She'd surface, coughing, eyes wild. I'd yelled, remember, the sea is only strong when you forget you're made of it too. She'd found her rhythm then, cutting through foam, laughing, unstoppable. I pushed the memory into the predator's throat. The creature gagged. The memory refused to be digested. It was too bright, too self-possessed. Memories, after all, are little souls inside the larger one. The beast's torso ballooned, cracks glowing aqua. With a thunderclap it burst, vaporizing into quick silver drizzle. Transmission hit 100. Soul wave gone. Drives full. Limbo trembled as my buffer strained. I seized Lien complete now, eyes brilliant, and angled for the funnel that would return us. But the implosion had destabilized the sector. 0 points were collapsing like sinkholes, draining color, gravity, meaning. My own existence flagged, glitchy. Digits peeled from my fingers like flaking paint. "Kai!" Lion screamed as my left arm blinked out. "Go!" I shoved the recall hook into her core and hurled her upward. She vanished in a silver comet. The sector folded inward. I triggered emergency jackout. A cyclone of noise shredded my tether. I felt circuits fry along my spinal plug. The last thing I sensed was a hand small, familiar grabbing my disintegrating wrist, refusing to let go. I gasped awake in the repository. Alarms keened, my rig smoked, and medbots swarmed, measuring vital. "How long?" I rasped. 6 minutes flat since your last verbal, Mantle said, appearing with a fire extinguisher. "And you detonated 3 cores on the way up. Drives held, though. 92 souls remounted." 92? I blinked. Thought it was 91. "You included your own checksum in the burst," she explained. "When your buffer ruptured, it dumped a full copy of you into redundancy. We've quarantined it until we figure out side effects." My brain felt like torn linen, but priorities lined up. "Leon? In stabilization bay," Mantle said. "She's conscious, asking for the fish who won't stay in his tank, I believe." I tried to stand. My legs buckled. Mantle caught me with surprising gentleness. "Easy. You fried half your neural lace. We can patch it, but you're grounded." "How many bodies on the countdown?" Mantle looked away. "Too many. But thanks to your mass lift, we bought triage time. With what you salvaged, we can template, heal, another 100,000. I did rough math through the haze. That still left millions. My shoulders sagged. Mantle must have read the storm on my face. "Listen, no diver is saving 6 million alone. But your methods, your storytelling algorithms, they worked. We'll train more divers, replicate the protocol. There's still hope." Hope is a fragile word in this line of business. But I held it like a seashell against my ear and thought I heard gulls. 3 hours later, I limped into stabilization. Leon reclined in a recliner wired with biotelemetry, sipping broth. When she saw me, her face crumpled and reformed into a smile wider than sunrise. "Hey, fish," she said. "Heard you dove a storm." "You know I hate calm water," I replied, sinking into a chair. The sister before me was exactly herself. No stutter in the gaze, no flicker of mismatch. Relief struck so fiercely, I had to blink it back at sweat. She patted my hand. "While you were net surfing Armageddon, this body told me things. Like pain in your circuits. You okay?" "Some burnt wiring, but I'll live." A pause. "I saw you throw me up to the surface. Saw you stay. I had to finish the wave." "Next time," she whispered, "we dive together. You won't face the dark alone." I nodded, though the thought of leading her into hell knotted my guts. "Next time." Director Mantle slid in then, carrying 2 slim drives. One bore Leon's name, the other was blank. "This is the copy of you from the redundancy burst," she told me, setting the blank on a tray. "Once we verify integrity, you can integrate or keep it external as a fallback." I stared at the little rectangle. Somewhere inside was another Kai, paused mid-action, hands aflame with story light, refusing to abandon figures made of code and yearning. The idea unnerved me, but also sparked an idea. "Director," I said slowly, "if you can spin that copy into a training rig, let it share instincts, reflexes new divers could learn in hours, what I learned in years." She raised an eyebrow. "And lose the commercial leverage of the Kaijun brand?" "The blackout didn't bargain," I said. "Neither should we." Mantle studied me, then nodded. "We'll begin tests at once." The director left. Leanne shifted, slipping her fingers through mine. "You just gave away your secret recipe, chef," she teased. "I'm tired of keeping recipes. I want tables full of people eating." Leanne squeezed. "Then let's set more tables." Outside the stabilization window, the city's skyline flickered under emergency grids. Some districts were dark still, their silhouettes trembling at the edge of dawn. I remembered the shadows, born of broken selves. Maybe we could reclaim them too, teach them stories to remind them they'd once been waves in the same ocean. Think the lights will hold? Leon asked. They'll hold, I said, though I wasn't sure. The point now was to dive and repair and dive again, each loop a prayer stitched in kilobytes. We were made of water and song, code and salt. Blackouts would come, but so would morning. I closed my eyes. Limbo's ink lifted from memory, replaced by sunlit tide pools. I felt barnacles under my bare feet, heard my sister laughing at the foam. There, in the hush before gulls, the world waited to be retold, and I was still a diver with breath left in my lungs.